Good day, mate.
Well, good afternoon, gentlemen. Thank you for joining once again. Welcome, everybody, to the Rugby Scoop podcast. I'm not here by myself as usual. I've got the usual suspects. I've got Enda all the way from Ireland, Hugh all the way from Wales/England, Vuyo all the way from Russia, and Jade all the way from South Africa. Welcome, gents. It's another episode, and obviously we're going to get things started. First of all, I'd like to introduce the panel. We're joined by Enda, all the way from Ireland. We're joined by Vuyo, all the way from Russia, South African former Blitzbokker. Hugh Griffin, the numbers man. He's joining us from England. Originally, he's from Wales. And Jade from Bloemfontein in South Africa. All right, and I'm your host, Pila Bitterhout. I run the handle called Rugby Scoop on Twitter. Gentlemen, welcome once again. A very awesome weekend of rugby. International footy is back, and we're going to be blessed by a lot of games coming up in the next few weeks. Obviously, today we are dissecting the Wallabies versus the Allblacks game at the G on Saturday, and then after that we are discussing the SPRINGBOKS versus Argentina. A lot to dissect in that game as well. But we're going to start off things by looking at the Bledisloe Cup. 84,000 people at the G. A very, very well attended game. Big hype up during the week as well. We made predictions last week on Friday. And now we basically get to understand what transpired on Saturday by asking the panel that has joined me. Jade, I want to start off with you. Are you impressed with what you saw yesterday from the All Blacks? And I mean, what is your take on the general spectre of the game? And obviously seeing how there were new players coming in. Carter Gordon at first 5 for Australia, young man, lots of potential, a lot of talk about him. But yeah, your general outlook on the game, All Blacks versus the Wallabies.
Afternoon, guys. Afternoon. Yeah. First of all, I thought it was a much mature and composed performance from New Zealand yesterday. It wasn't just a razzle-dazzle in the first 20 that we saw against Argentina and South Africa in the two previous rounds. I think Australia fronted up for the first 30. And then I thought the legs got into them. I think the back was a little bit too big. Couldn't chase around the field. I mean, New Zealand kept the ball sometimes. I think the try for Will Jordan was 23 phases. Mm-hmm. So they really got to them. They kept New Zealand at bay. There wasn't real line breaks from New Zealand in the first 30 or so. It was real. New Zealand had to graph for their tries, although Carter Gordon started well. If I start with him, he started well, and then he made a crucial coach-killing mistake by not getting the dropout successfully from the restart. Yeah. Unfortunately, poor old Alan Alatua is the casualty from that scrum. Terrible injury. New Zealand piggybacked from there from a try, got a try from there eventually. So it was a real 14-point turnaround for them, or 7-point turnaround in the space of 5 minutes. New Zealand did what they did against Australia in recent years, killing them off before and after halftime. Not so much after halftime. I think after halftime, Australia threw the kitchen sink at them. New Zealand's defense was very well organized. But yeah, very, very good performance from the All Blacks, mature, kept the ball, did not panic, although they didn't make any line breaks, they kept the ball, they stuck to their guns. Scott Barrett did World Rugby a favour for what he manhandled Nick White a few times over there, so I think he did World Rugby a favour. But a very, very good performance from New Zealand. I think they set down the marker.
Yeah, fair enough. Hugh, your take on the All Blacks and the Wallabies game?
Well, Scoop, I've got really nothing left to say about Australia. I think we all sat around on this call 3 weeks ago previewing the first weekend of games, and we all said what would happen. They'd concede loads and loads of points. Eddie wouldn't show us anything in terms of attack, and it would basically be pre-season for them. They finished comfortably the worst out of all of the Rugby Championship teams. So, like I say, there's nothing I can say about them after that game than I couldn't have said before the game.
Yeah.
I think from a New Zealand point of view, it's been really quite cool, really, to see them get back into their zone. I was messaging Ender through the game, and you could really see the Joe Schmidt chess moves starting to come through. Where they were really targeting the blind side, lots of really short passes. You saw them move off the line out where they brought Will Jordan through earlier in the first half, created an opportunity through a nice little move there. So it's cool seeing them click, and you knew as that game went on, it was a very Super Rugby-esque game, really, unsurprisingly, because it's the two Super Rugby main nations.
Yeah.
Australia sticking at it kind of in the first half, but they were kind of being brave rather than anything particularly good. And then New Zealand just ran away with it, as they do, as we've seen them do a million times in the past. Really playing the natural game. You can see the players were massively in their comfort zone throughout the game. So yeah, it's actually been quite almost enjoyable, if not a little bit scary, to see the All Blacks go from the hole they were in 12 months ago to getting themselves back together.
Yeah, fair enough. Vuyo, you were not too pleased, or you were not quite happy with what Australia had to offer on Saturday?
Look, the most important for me was looking at what New Zealand was going to bring, because I knew Australia is not going to bring anything. When I look at the performance, I look at with Skelton, how he performed the whole game, brilliant. It's almost like he had a one run with Eddie and got into the face of the New Zealanders.
Yeah.
But other than that, I think, look, we've been saying this. Australia don't have a defense coach. And with Australia, yes, we know that Australia can attack, but with what you are giving us is not the right product in terms of quality. When I look at Carter Gordon, it wasn't bad. I think for first test, young man did very well. I think he did very well, and I think we can improve. He can improve from there. He can definitely improve from what he started with. Better than what we have seen from Quaid.
Yeah.
I still think, for me, one thing's for sure. Australia needs a defense coach, because they held New Zealand up until that moment where, guys, took them two phases. We're talking about catching from a kickoff, going wide, breaking the line, smashing it, and getting to the 22, wide shitless pass, and then after that, a try with a good step from Telau. I think for me, it was one of those where I still say Australia do need a defense coach, but it wasn't impressive. I understand what Jade is talking about. I wasn't impressed with New Zealand's attacking. I wasn't impressed at all. So I think there's still a lot more to build from that if they want to win the World Cup.
Fair enough. Enda?
Yeah, the All Blacks they're building quite well, aren't they? Like, quite nicely. They've really shown that in these opening few games, which is probably terrifying for the rest of us. But yeah, they're building nicely, I think. And I think Vuyo was right, probably. Like, they didn't do an awful lot in attack, but it was still a really clinical performance. Going back to the predictions, I believe I said it was going to be a 15-point win. I think Bio again was right with the 20-point win there. But Australia, I think it was definitely an improved performance, wasn't it? And it was great to see Carter Gordon back. But the important thing for me now is that he's given more game time. He had overall a good game, but obviously he made some crucial errors, especially the one that Jade touched on that led to that scrum where Alatola got that horrific injury. Yeah. But he needs to be back. He needs more game time, and I really hope Eddie doesn't drop him. We never see the likes of him again. So I really hope he gets more time. And yeah, but still, Australia overall so far, they've scored the least amount of tries, least amount of defenders beaten. Their discipline has been really poor. They've conceded the highest amount of yellows. They're conceding an awful amounts of turnovers, so it's still an awful lot to do for them. Yeah. But yeah, the All Blacks are definitely building really nicely, I think, and they might be holding back as well, especially in attack, especially Nolan Schmidt. There are definitely moves that they're not running at the moment, and they're holding them out for the World Cup. Yeah. But yeah, the Aussies, as we said on Friday, they have an awful lot of work to do.
No, fair enough. Kofi, I see you back from shopping because Australia was playing. You tend to go on a shopping spree when Australia plays. Good to have you back. Your thoughts on Saturday? About Saturday's game?
It depends who they're playing against, eh? It depends who they're playing against. If it's Australia or Argentina, I'm out of there. The games were good games of rugby. Definitely had more focus on the South Africa game, mostly because I was part of a coaching staff that played at the same time the All Blacks played. So unfortunately, I couldn't catch that game in live.
All right. Then we're looking at... Wait. We're looking at the Wallabies and All Blacks now, and then we'll touch on the Springboks after this conversation.
No worries.
Fair enough.
But I did watch a little bit of it in the evening.
Okay.
With the energy that I had. I think it's more about a settled structure now in terms of, the guys that can give them what they want. Very similar team to what they had last week. So yeah. I think now it's about throwing all the eggs in that basket and hoping that, they come good at the right time. I think they've played against the best of the Southern Hemisphere. Yeah. And it was very good. Australia, I think they took down to the plum. I thought the centers, once again, were good. I'm liking Rico. Last week we spoke about game sense, especially Bravik. But I think, even via the pass that he made to Talia, skip pass that he made to Talia over the top of Whitelock for that goose step, just shows that his sense of awareness and his sense of space is coming along. Yeah. I think the settled squad compared to other teams potentially mixing and matching and hoping to find combinations is probably a plus on their side. And whereas Australia is still finding combos, South Africa is still finding combos. Yes, they've got two good teams that can put out, but they're still finding their best combos. Yeah. Argentina rested a couple of guys, have been bringing guys in because they played in the top 14 and other tournaments as well. So the New Zealand team at the moment is looking like the most settled team. And I think this is something, if you go back to 2 years ago on this channel, we spoke about in terms of who were the most settled teams at that point in time. Yeah. And when the Boks were playing against the British and Irish Lions, I could feel that was the peak of this Boks team. But let's not go too much on a segue on that. I thought good games of rugby. Australia got work to do, especially on defense, as been mentioned. New Zealand are looking more settled, got good coaching staff. I think they know what they like, what they want to do. Yeah, I think they're settled on 12 at Barrett, and I'm so happy about that. Shame for David Havili, but I don't think it was position anyways. Yeah. And then they've also got a massive engine up front as well, which they were looking for as well. So yeah, all in all, good for the All Blacks. Other teams got a little bit more work to do.
Yeah. Vuyo wanted to jump in, and then Hugh, you'll jump in after that.
No. I wanted to just talk about, obviously the guys have touched on it. For me, the one important thing in this was when we discussed the 13 position. We discussed the benching of obviously Sam.
Yeah.
And I think for us, we also have to touch back and say, okay, what did become? What did transpire in terms of the game? Look, it's one of those hard things to understand, because I mean, game sense comes into what we talked about the players that you put on the field, and that tackle by we'll look at the Barrett brother on that first try says it all. Like that, you can't coach that. You can't coach that, and the fact that ball was off the top, it has to become one of the things that's what kicked off. Because I always tell my players, look, in your 5 meter, you do not want to deliver off the top as much as you want to fake more, but you don't deliver off the top. But I think that's one of the things that we need to touch on is as I mean, our space is trying to grow. We're trying to get more listeners. Is what Anna talked about in terms of what did New Zealand bring? New Zealand brought in. They didn't bring in anything special, but the blindside attack. If you remember how the Irish beat, New Zealand, because they were trying to cancel out the rush defense, so they kept on going one in, one out, one back, one in, one back, one in, one back. That is what Schmidt has brought, and unfortunately, if South Africa has to beat New Zealand in a World Cup year, in what we call the crunch time, it's one of those things where you have to look at that and say, okay, what were these guys trying to? I was pretty disappointed at the fact that they went with the same game kicking plan that they had with the Springboks. I was pretty disappointed at that, because I would have hoped that they would have changed it, unless they didn't trust Kurumbetu could be doing the same thing. And yes, Kurumbetu did get a yellow card, but if you saw New Zealand were kicking off the 10 and kicking across, and it was Bowden Barrett was kicking. So that's another thing that we need to be talking about. How did they get there? Like, I would have felt as a coach that I would need to change my structure based on what Australia was bringing. And brilliant idea by hitting the blind side, one in, hitting the blind side, one in. That was brilliant by them. But I see Joe Schmidt absolutely 100% on that. And I think if we look, as I said, we look at what other tactics they brought, because even the overthrows went really your front foot, but it was read by Australia. And I think that's something for me that I think we could touch on.
Hugh?
Yeah, I just wanted to make the point about the defences. As the guys said, Australia got to work on the defence. I've seen a few people around social media talk about the number of tackles Australia have been making and their tackle percentage, and arguing that that shows their defence is getting better. Well, Australia and New Zealand across the span of the Rugby Championship this year have got the same tackle success rate. They're both on 87%.
Mm-hmm.
New Zealand have conceded 39 points. Australia have conceded 115 points. So that kind of tells you where the defences are at. I think we just need to recognise how excellent the New Zealand defence has been.
Yeah.
I think they've kept their opposition to one score or less in 4 of the 6 halves of rugby they've played in this championship. I think only the Boks have scored more than 2 scores against them in one half of rugby, and I think they've nilled both Argentina and Australia in at least one half. That is seriously impressive stuff. That is as good a defence as you will see at international level. So I think that's a part of their game that, when you think All Blacks, you don't think defence, but I think there's something they've really gotten right in this championship.
Jade, you want to add more on what Vuyo is saying, I think, as well?
Yeah, so to touch on Vuyo, and I agree 100% with him in terms of the game plan. It was basically running down what was done against the Springboks. But I want to pose this to the panel, and something I thought of now. We know the weekend's test is a dead rubber, the second Bledisloe. Now, do you think the guys in the 23 will be getting opportunity, the likes of maybe Lestefana, Nuku and Narawa and, all of those guys coming in, DMAC at 10? do you think, by looking at the second string guys, do you think we'll get a clear indication of exactly what Foster and Schmidt's idea is? The reason for me saying this is because obviously these guys want to play their way into the World Cup squad, right? And they don't want to, play out of game plan or go away from what's being coached. So what they're going to do in the field is what's being coached and what they've been a part of for the past 5 or 6 weeks and implement that onto the field so they can gain Schmidt and Foster's trust. Obviously in rugby, you play the situation. But do you think with the second stringers that might play the weekend, we might see more of what Foster and Schmidt has in store for the All Blacks? Because, obviously if they can come on and they can show what the game plan is or play, the type of game that Schmidt and Foster want, it would be better for them to get into the squad, But if they're going for individual brilliance, they might just not be in the squad.
Yeah. Kofi, you want to jump on?
Yeah, I do. Thank you very much. Very good question. I think, first of all, I don't know if there are other listeners or it's just the six of us. If it's just the six of us, this is great. It's like chatting with nobody else listening.
It's being recorded anyway, so people will get to listen afterwards. Yeah.
Great question, Jade. I think it all depends on how settled your squad is. I was just watching the Scotland against Italy game, where Scotland played a lot of their second stringers in a warm-up game effectively. And that's probably to determine the likes of, Duan van der Merwe, Hugh Jones, Tuipolotu, the rest of the guys that are, frontline players, probably resting based on the fact that Gregor Townsend knows exactly what he's going to get from them and they can implement the game plan. The second stringers obviously then put pressure on the main guys in terms of, delivering on that game plan and trust, like you mentioned. And I think it's the same for the guys down in the Southern Hemisphere. Depending on where you are with regards to your preparation and trust that you have and injuries and all those factors and variables put together, you then make a decision on where your team is at in terms of what you're trying to implement and improve. So in New Zealand, for example, who I believe are further along in their planning, further along in their structures, further along in their execution in terms of the first-rate players. This is an opportunity now for the second-rate players, if we can call them that. Pardon me if I offend anybody. To play within this structure, obviously with their own flavor, but within this structure, and prove to the coaches that they can implement this structure as best as possible. I think you wrap up all three Barrett brothers in cotton wool. I think you wrap up Richie Mwanga in cotton wool. I think you wrap up your front three guys in cotton wool, your De Groot, Takiao, Cody Taylor, those guys, you wrap them up. They don't see another game. They've played 4 or 3 very good games.
Yeah.
Whereas in the South African team, there's a little bit of uncertainty, if I can put it that way, with regards to who's going to be there, who's not going to be there. Kolisi's injured. Is he going to make it on time? Is he going to be fit enough? Will he have enough minutes under the clock, enough running meters under the clock in order to play and in order to be considered as, not your number 20, but your number 7 or number 6 or whatever the case might be. Same thing with Australia. I think Australia need to play as much minutes as possible with whoever they feel like their frontline guys are going to be, because at this point in time, they're just not up to standard. They're just not up to scratch. Are they in a different pool that makes it easier for them? For sure. How far does it mean that they're going to go? It gives them slightly more time in order to improve things and get the cog kind of, working as what it needs to work.
Yeah.
But depending on where you are, depending on the variables that are at play, you make that decision. If I'm the South African coach, I want to get my starting lineup in as quickly as possible because there's going to be no time to waste. If I'm the Argentina coach, same thing. If I'm the Australia coach, if I'm Eddie Jones, I want to get my starting guys up to scratch, up to standard as quickly as possible. If I'm the All Black coach, I'm putting my guys on cotton wool.
Yeah, I think it's a very good question, Jade, that you posed to the group. For me personally, I think going into the second Bledisloe Cup game. Obviously, it's dead rubber. Now, I would like to see Damian McKenzie again. Narawa, I would love to see him again as well. Like Kofi said, a lot of your first choice players need to be wrapped up in cotton wool. And then you want to give the likes of Nepo Laulalas a start actually. You want to give Tupovai a start as well. Maybe he starts with a Sam Whitelock who came off from the bench, lost this past weekend. McKenzie, you can slot him in at 10 as well, I think. Maybe start Roygaard and McKenzie. I mean, you've got nothing else to lose. It's a dead rubber game. You also want to see your your second stringers now under pressure in Dunedin as well. Home game. You want to see how they perform, if they're also able to implement the game plan as the other first stringers have done in the past 3 to 4 weeks now, as we've seen, right, in terms of consistency. So in that sense, I think coming into next weekend, then Foster, Ryan, Schmidt basically need to now entrust the second stringers into also going out there and actually showing them what they can do. Yes, Vuyo. Vuyo, you've got...
So, like we talked about, it's so, I mean, Coffee touched on it a little bit, but how impressive that you would be that you have your squad. You have your squad, you settled in the squad. Basically, now we see a starting lineup for New Zealand that is obviously working for them with the combinations. I was so impressed with Roygaard. I was like, okay, cool. He didn't get a lot of minutes, but like I would say, this kid has got what it takes to be a All Black scrummer, because firstly, he's coming in big shoes in terms of Aaron. Aaron is massive for New Zealand, and Roygaard is coming in and obviously matching what he's done, what Aaron has done. I think for me, the one comment I wanted to make was I wanted to say with in terms of the teams, if Australia needs to play 6 games before going into the World Cup, they need to, because that will give them the confidence going into the World Cup. And Eddie doesn't need to change anything. He just needs to make 1 or 2 changes in terms of how they're going to play, and that's it. And he can obviously try and put the guys out there, because the more they play together, and I like the fullback combination, the fullback 14, 15, 14 and 11 combination. I like it. I think
back
for me,
three.
that is, the back three was perfect. Now, he just needs more game time. And if he has to play 6 games before that, why not?
Yeah.
Look, you run the risk of injury. But, guy, you just taken the job. And so when you've just taken the job, that means that you're going to have to
take some risks.
instill these guys your game plan. And the way that they play now is not going to be the way they play with Reina. So now, I think for me, if I was Australian coach, I would do that. I would fucking look at games everywhere and just try and play as much as I can to gain the confidence that these guys need to get.
Fair enough. All right, gents, before we close this particular subject, I just like to think, I think Eddie Jones is on the right track currently from what I saw yesterday. The reasons why I say this, I think Australia did very well in that opening 20 minutes of the game. They forced the All Blacks to kind of try and put more people at ruck time. Will Skelton was very effective in slowing down the All Black ball. We saw how fast paced the All Blacks were at ruck speed, at ruck time against the Springboks. So Eddie Jones was very smart in calculating how to slow down the All Black attack. And then the first 15 minutes after the second half as well was quite crucial. All Blacks were very good on defense, yes, but they copped a lot of penalties from Australia because Australia was actually able to put them under pressure. So those small little victories during that game, I mean, the scoreline was not that much of a gap until probably the 32nd minute of the first half, and then obviously All Blacks ran away with it from the 60th minute onwards. But if you look at, if you divide that game up into segments, you basically look at how Australia have literally put in some work. They've literally done better in yesterday's game. Obviously, it might be the occasion. I don't know. But in what happened yesterday, if you really analyze what Australia are trying to do at the moment, you basically see some of the work paying off in those small quarters during that game yesterday as well. Yes, Jade.
Yeah, so while we're wrapping it up, I just wanted to something I thought about over the weekend while watching Fiji versus Samoa. And I'd like to address this to Enda and you, actually, just quickly. Do you see Fiji and Australia now with all of these results? Although Australia has made big improvements yesterday, I must agree they did come onto the scene. But do you see Fiji and Australia now as on the same level-ish, if you're going to prepare for them? Especially from a Wales perspective, going to the World Cup, just keeping one eye on that pool in the World Cup.
Yeah.
Good question, Jade. As a Welsh rugby fan, I've been terrified of this Fiji game for a long time. Fiji's one of those games where even if you don't lose the game, you still lose because half of your players get injured. We saw in the last World Cup, we had Jonathan Davis got injured in that game, and that was pretty much the end of us. And in 2015 as well, we had that amazing victory in Twickenham over England, and then we had to play Fiji 3 days later, and that pretty much ended us in that tournament as well. Mm-hmm. It's on my list, so ask me this question again in a couple of weeks. It's in my list to deep dive into the cohesion of Fiji at the moment and look at how they are transferring that Drua team into an international team.
Yeah.
It's fair to say I can't remember Fiji being in as good of a place. They've looked quite comfortable in the Pacific Championship so far. And they're taking a team that has performed well in Super Rugby. I think the Drua are ahead of where a lot of people thought they might be by now.
Yep.
And they're just taking and adding into that players who are competing at the top level in Europe. So, yeah, am I scared of Fiji? Of course I am. I think Fiji are in a happier place than Australia at the moment. But I don't know if comparing Fiji beating Samoa and Tonga, as much as I love those teams, is the same as comparing as Australia to playing the All Blacks yet. But yeah, I do wonder. It did occur to me the other day. I wonder if anyone in Australia is keeping an eye on Fiji. I want to say they've got Fiji in their third game. I have to double check, but I think they've got Georgia, then Wales, then Fiji. They could be pretty shattered by the time Australia comes to play that game. So, yeah, if I was Australian, I'd be nervous.
Enda?
Yeah, I think that they definitely, Fiji are definitely building nicely. I would be, from a Welsh perspective, nervous of them, of course. And it's kind of interesting, isn't it, just touching on Australia and comparing them. I do think you have to put the Australia, the teams they played, into perspective. Usually Eddie Jones, when he takes over a team, he's got a really positive impact. They do really well at the beginning, and then it usually fades out in terms of performances. We haven't seen that yet with him, obviously, but you have to look at who he's playing against the Allblacks, the Springboks, and Argentina. So he's been up against it. So I do think, and obviously we did see those improvements yesterday. So I think by the time the World Cup comes around, they'll probably go into the World Cup with 5 losses out of 5 games.
Yeah. But
I still think they'll put in a good performance at the World Cup, as Australia always do, because I am waiting for that impact that Eddie Jones usually has on a team. I'd be shocked if he didn't. But yeah, it's exciting, isn't it, seeing Fiji doing so well in the lead up to the World Cup. It just adds to the whole occasion, doesn't it? But yeah, hopefully Australia, I think for the sake of the tournament, do continue to improve on yesterday's performance.
Yeah, I think someone once tweeted as well that Fiji Drua could beat Leinster, Enda?
Yeah, not too sure about that.
No chance, right? No.
In table, yeah. In table.
Yes, Hugh, you want to round this conversation off and then we move to the Springboks and Argentina.
So, just what Ender said there about going into the World Cup on 5 straight defeats. Losing is a habit. Coaches talk about this. It's a real thing. These Australian players have been, with the exclusion of the Brumbies players, they've lost pretty much every week since the start of Super Rugby, and now they've lost all of their championship games, and they could very well lose the rest of their warm-ups as well, and then they're going into that first match. That's not a place you want to be. It makes it so much more difficult when you're in those tight games, and most World Cup games will be tight, especially between the Tier 1 nations.
Yeah.
You don't want to be going into those games with your players who haven't won in basically a year or even more than that. That's such an extra factor that Eddie Jones could just live without.
Fair enough. Hey, Manyosha, I see you've joined us as well. Gentlemen, Saturday, Ellis Park, South Africa versus Argentina. Whew. A lot of people went shopping like coffee. But we're going to start it off. Kofi, Springboks versus Argentina. I mean, what are your takes? What went wrong? What went right? Where do the Springboks go from here? I know looking at the game against the All Blacks, everyone was saying, the guys are still fresh off the boat. They haven't had much physicality. They haven't played a lot of games. But now they've been in camp for at least a month. They've had a few hit-outs at the moment. So Ellis Park, altitude has been spoken about, but it didn't seem to affect Argentina. If they got a few conversions over, the scoreline might have been different. Take me through the Springbok and Argentina game.
Yeah, interesting game to dissect, to be quite honest, because you expect so much from the Springboks. I mean, they're the team that put New Zealand under the most pressure, if we're being honest about it. But Argentina also a plucky side. I think if you listen to the commentary, a couple of the guys were saying they just don't go away.
Yeah.
They don't go away. And unless you put 20, 25 points between you and them, they just don't go away. It's a shame to have seen, I think, 3 suspected concussions in the game.
Yeah.
I thought that was a bit of a sad point in terms of, guys' techniques, etc., etc. From a Springbok perspective, and my commiserations to Grant. I think this plays a big part in terms of determining whether he goes to the World Cup or not. I think this would have made our visions a lot clearer, but it's just a shame that he didn't get enough minutes as a result of that injury. From the game, from the RG side, I thought, and I tweeted this, Santiago Carreras, I thought it was incredible. I thought his goal kicking was a shambles, though, but I thought he was very good. I thought we had this debate about Sinti on Friday, and I actually thought he was very good. Funny enough, was it Kobe or was it Faf? I think it was Kobe. Kobe made a tackle on Sinti. Argentina were about 8 points behind, and they were on attack, probably 12, 13 phases. They had the ball from their own line, sort of, and they were literally a meter or so close to scoring, and Kobe made a tackle, and I felt like at that moment that was a game winner. So it was good to see the Springbok defense, obviously, showing a little bit of character outside of their own structure as well. But I thought those guys in particular were good. I thought the forward pack stood up well. It was good for them not to get yellow cards confirmed. If I'm wrong, I don't think there was a yellow card, which is a good thing in terms of competition when Argentina plays. They usually play with 14 or 13 even.
Yeah.
So I thought that kept them in the game. And I thought the other Carreras, the winger, Mateus, I thought he was also very good. In terms of a structure, they play very similar structure. They play very similar structure. I think Argentina hold it probably for a phase or 2 more, which invariably means that there's a defender or 2 that's tired and maybe there's a hole to attack into, especially off the second receiver. But in total, I think they're definitely on an upward trajectory. I think they need to obviously find goal kicker. Preferably if he plays, will obviously be the ace in that perspective. And if he plays, that game is probably, 5 points won by Argentina. In so saying, I don't think the Springboks were terrible. I just think the Springboks play a game plan that doesn't put the better teams away. They never go away, but it doesn't put the better teams away in the first half, for example, because they play quite a kicking game plan. I think the tempo of the game definitely changed from what they trained during the week. I think Grant would have given them something very different from what Faf gave them.
Yeah.
Interestingly, I don't think Faf kicked as much as what he normally does. I do think that as good as Willie Leroux is, there are times where he must allow the 10 to be the 10, He must allow that commanding, especially if it's a guy that can pass, a guy like Libok who can pass off left and right, who, by the way, I thought he had a very good game. And I think he's definitely going. A guy who can pass left and right and can create holes. I think it's good for him to get into that position more often than not. I would like to see Willie in the left hand side of the field with his kicking option. So I think with regards to, we can go all day with regards to technicality. I think the Springboks at this moment, as much as they are playing as many guys as possible to get the minutes in, I think they need to start next week. They need to
settle, effectively
play their first team, and start looking at the guys that they're going to take to the World Cup, because unfortunately they can't take everyone, but they're going to have to start looking at combinations that make sense for the first 4 or 5 games of the World Cup up until the quarterfinals, with reserves included as well. So I don't think it's all doom and gloom. I think they'll always play a tournament-specific game, and that game will always result in them coming to the quarterfinal, semi-final, final. It just depends on the execution on the day. Sorry for the long-winded chat.
No worries. Enda?
Yeah, look, to touch on what Kofi said, to me the biggest thing that stood out was the sad event, like with Williams getting knocked out, because I think we were all, as we all said on Friday, we were all really excited to see him start and to see him put in a really good performance, and he deserved that start, so that was really sad to see. I don't really want to get into the referee's decision. I think I know well what everybody will say. But yeah.
No. Let's get into it. Ask the question, share your thoughts. What do you think of the decision?
I can see where I can see how the referee came to that decision. I don't agree with it, but I see where he's coming from, because within the first 10 seconds of the game, he probably just didn't want to make a really controversial decision. But it should have absolutely been a minimum yellow, and then should have been referred to the bunker.
Mm-hmm.
What? Yeah, kind of conscious of the audience, but I think I can see why the ref made that decision and backed himself, and did say it was like the ball was blocked. But I know everybody has been comparing that to CJ Stander when he effectively ended Lambie's career. So you have to bear that in mind as well. It was very similar. Obviously, Stander didn't block the ball down at all in that, but obviously did make direct contact and knocked Pat Lambie straight out.
100%.
So that was just, for me, that was, and I'd like to open up to the panel on your guys' thoughts, but for me, that was the biggest standout. I would have loved to see Williams get a shot, because I think, unfortunately, that is going to now probably determine who's going to make that plane in terms of a scrum half. I'd love to get your guys' take on this.
I will share my thoughts. I think Brace got it right, because once you make contact with the ball, because your first instance is to charge the ball down, and your duties of charging the ball down is to make contact with the ball. If you miss the ball and you make direct contact with the head, obviously then the sanction becomes different, right? But in that case, he does charge the ball down, and unfortunately, he can't change movement in the middle of the air. He's literally in a good position to charge the ball down. Did he charge the ball down? Yes, we tick the box. And does he make contact then after that? After the fact, he's charged the ball down? Yes, but also it's a rugby incident in that sense of He's charged the ball down. He's mid-air. He can't change position in that situation. So it is a rugby incident. It's pretty much similar to some of the rugby incidents, inverted commas, that happen at tackle situations as well. I mean, you can't, if someone goes down or drops, has a sudden drop of body height in a tackle situation, you can't go straight immediate red. If someone suddenly changes direction, and you are already committed to a tackle, and he lands his head on your shoulder or it's head on head, in those situations, that's why you mitigate and you call it a rugby incident, and you don't give it a red card. In those situations, you'll give it a yellow, because now you're understanding the sudden change, you're understanding the sudden drop in body height as well. So in that situation, the guy can't really change in midair. So I think the call was pretty correct, actually. Yes, it's dangerous, but unfortunately, you can't move away from those situations. It's a contact sport. Those things are going to happen. Vuyo, your thoughts?
Looking at obviously the two incidents, I think Upile has touched on it quite obviously deep. If you look at what Kirivi did against was it? I'm not sure who was the person kicking. He got a yellow card. They got a penalty. But for me, I don't even know, look at that incident. It's one of those like rugby incidents. That is what we still say till today. There's a grey area. There's no, because once you jump and you're jumping and you hit a player in kicking, because we do chase, normally in coaching, we chase nines. We use nines to chase the kicker. I don't think it was a big problem. I think for me, it was a fair call. I think it was one of those calls where, yes, it happened. It's one of the incidents where we could have been, as a coaching group, we didn't expect. It's so unfortunate we missed Lendwano Grant Williams in the game, because I felt this game needed Grant. If you saw a couple of times, Faf did take the ball and went to quick tap, but he stood away, and that's one of the things that we did miss. And it's so unfortunate that we did get to that point, but. If you look at the game itself, I think the game was a stalemate. Like, it was one of those where you bring physicality, we bring physicality, and we were basically in a situation where, what can we do better? What can you do better? And that's what, I mean, we all love Cheka for, because Cheka is a mastermind. He's a mastermind of a coach. For me, I think we were misgrant in that sense, because of as much as Eben had a brilliant game. Eben had one of the Stormers, one of the Stormer game in terms of performance, but we did miss him. We did miss Grant in terms of how he could have changed that game completely. And for me as a coach, I would say, look, give this young man another chance. When we play in New Zealand, give this young man another chance and let him start. Let him start again. I mean, we know what we have in Faf. Yes, Faf did kick less, but we know what we have in Faf. And it's not going to be what some of us do want, but it is what it is. So I think in terms of what you guys are talking about, in terms of the referee decision, a good decision. It was a rugby incident, nothing more on it, and I can't fault him. I can't fault the officials for making that call.
Hugh.
Yeah, I think I agree with it being a rugby collision, because I don't think you can say that the Argentinian player has done anything illegal. You know, with this high-profile event we've had now, obviously we've mentioned the one with CJ Stander, and there's another one in my mind, which was Wales against Australia a few years ago, where an Australian player has jumped to charge down Lee Halfpenny, and he's gone smashed into Halfpenny's face on the way down, and Halfpenny was out for the best part of a year based on that concussion as well. So I just wonder whether the only thing you could do from a World Rugby point of view is ban jumping for a charge down, because you're unsafe when you come back. maybe that's something, if Grant Williams, God forbid, is badly hurt and he didn't look great, obviously during the match, maybe that's the only rule change you could bring in. But I think I agree with the decision and everything. I think one thing that Andrew Brace does deserve a bit of criticism for is the fact that he didn't stop the match. We could all see it on TV. Grant Williams was lying on his front, absolutely out cold, his eyes rolling back. And I think Andrew Brace let himself down, to be honest, when he didn't bring the game to a stop. He awarded the penalty to Argentina and was ready to play on.
Yeah.
And it was Willie LaRue who came over and tapped him on the shoulder and said, "Mate, we've got a guy passed out," and he was literally at his feet. And I think it happened again later on in the game. I didn't quite catch the later on one because I was flicking between the Scotland game. But yeah, I think from a World Rugby point of view, I'd hope that Andrew Brace gets a bit of a tap on the shoulder and says, "You've let a player down here."
Yeah.
So I'm not criticising him for his decisions. I'm not here to debate that. But I think in terms of his looking after the player, I think he's been poor there.
Fair enough. Enda, you want to jump in here, and then Jade, you share after that?
Yeah, just one thing on the whole incident, really. I think we're Rugby obviously doing everything they can to reduce the amount of concussions. Based on what everyone's saying, it is just one of those incidents that we're not going to be able to get out of the game. There are always going to be concussions. We can do nothing about that, but we can reduce the number of concussions. And it was just really unfortunate, wasn't it? It was one of those rugby incidents. And I just think no matter, we can have all the goodwill in the world, but it is very hard to make rugby a safe sport. It's not a safe sport. It's a collision sport. These things are going to happen. And unfortunately, we're just going to have to live with that. I think it's interesting on the jumping into if we were to ban that aspect, maybe where you can jump and block the ball, then I probably wouldn't be in favour of it. But if it did make the sport safer, maybe. But for me, these are the risks you kind of have to live with. If you play rugby union or you support rugby union, there are massive risks attached, and there's nothing we can do about these incidents. I don't think, without fundamentally changing the game. If we want to rule out concussion, if we want to get rid of it from rugby, we'd have to ban tackling. We're never going to do that. But that's the only way to get rid of them. But I think hopefully that the sport is in general in a safer spot now. I know concussion rates have been up, but I think that's because we're actually reporting them now, whereas in times gone by, unfortunately, they weren't. I just wanted to jump in with that piece.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Jade?
Let's do what Anders says there. And you get a lot of guys today saying that, the game's gone soft. But if you get incidents like that we're asking for more protection, so we're stuck at crossroads. But, guys, I think, the whole law book, he did nothing wrong according to law. However, it was a head collision. I think we need to address the law book. Maybe just looking at maybe changing direction in the air, player welfare. But I agree with all of you guys. He did nothing wrong. It was a rugby incident. It was in the first 10 seconds of the game. There was no way that Andrew Brace would give a red card in the first 10 seconds of the game. I think Micah Checker would have went down from his coaching box on the field and, gave him a tongue lashing. But yeah, it's unfortunate. I do feel for Grant because I believe that Grant Williams is the point of difference in this Bok team. I think he is the X factor. If you're coming from the bench, he's a point of difference. He gives them something the other nines can't give. Unfortunately, it doesn't look good for him. It looks like he's in a race against time, with all the concussion protocols and everything going on to make it for the World Cup. I hope for the best. Yesterday's game, frustrating to watch. Actually, the afternoon, I spent the whole day watching Academy Rugby in Bloemfontein. I saw a game between Griquas Academy and Picker Academy, and I saw what guys were doing going into contact, going straight one off into contact, not using their feet in contact, stepping into space or, using it as something that Ireland done brilliantly. It's something that France done brilliantly with Aldrit and Olivon. But the Boks are doing the same thing in contact. It's one off into contact. They're not using their feet no matter who the carrier is. There's no foot movement. It's straight bashing. There was one time where Malcolm Marx used his hips and he made a bust. And I'm thinking to myself, if the Boks master this skill, with their physicality, they will be unstoppable because they're the only country that they don't do it. I mean, if you look at Gonzalez and Montero yesterday, who were menacing from Argentina, they got them over the front foot when they carried, but they used their feet in contact. It's something the box should address. I'm not sure if Rassie is aware of this or not, but we are very one-dimensional. We focused on getting over the advantage line too much, not thinking about the next play. Even when it comes to the next play, like Kofi says, there's no patience. Sometimes Vali rushes into 10 instead of letting the box just be the general for two more or phases and then coming in. There's a big balance between the drivers in that team. They need to sort it out. It didn't look good yesterday, but you know what? In 12 months' time, the Boks win the World Cup. We will forget about this game. We won't remember it. A win is a win.
Gentlemen, on Friday, Kofi, I'll let you jump in just now. On Friday, we discussed a lot of pointers on who are the players that still need to put their hands up. Obviously, I think the general consensus amongst the group now is that we would have all loved to see Grant Williams get a stab on Saturday, but obviously, unfortunately, his game was cut short. But there are still other players lingering, having basically put their foot down, in solidifying their spot within this team. I want you guys to kind of think about who those players are, and obviously what else do they need to do next week, because Springboks are playing Argentina again next week, just like the All Blacks are playing Australia as well. Kofi, you want to jump in?
I just wanted to jump in on the previous point on referee brace.
Okay, yeah.
I just can't think back to the game clearly enough, but I think sometimes the position that you're standing in compromises your ability to see what has actually transpired. Now, they've obviously got, from the first point, you've obviously got to make a judgment call from the first point. So I think where you're standing compromises that if you don't see it. And they've obviously got assistant referees to be able to make a call on that. And if, the assistant referee on both touchlines as well as the video assistant referee all don't see an issue, it becomes quite hectic for, the public then to make a call on what they believe should have been right and what should have been wrong. So I didn't get a chance to agree with the rest of the guys in terms of it being a rugby incident, and it's super unfortunate, but I think that's exactly what it is. The question was, who are the guys that are definitely going?
No, who are the guys that still need to convince Rassie and Jacques?
Well, if you go via positions, I think number 2 is pretty much set in stone.
Yeah.
I think you're going to have to make a call between Dweba and Dion Fourie. I think obviously Fourie has the potential to play in the loose trio also, whereas Dweba is an out-and-out hooker. But I do believe that they might make the call on Dweba with regards to that. I think the locks are things that they need to sort out. I think there's just one prop position between Nyakane and Thomas Dutoy that they need to figure out.
Yeah.
Based on form mostly. The locks, I think Ori's got work to do. I was actually quite disappointed in Archie Snyman yesterday. I didn't see much of an impact from his side in the second stanza. I'm not saying that he's got work to do, but he's obviously hasn't had the same number of minutes as everybody else in terms of playing, but I do think he's going to be on the plane. I'm worried about Kwagga Smith. I'm worried about Kwagga Smith. I don't know if he's going through something or what, or the type of game he's trying to play that's being enforced by the coach, but I don't think it's his type of game plan. He's getting thrown around by guys who are bigger than him, stronger than him. So I worry about that. As an impact player for sure, but as a starting candidate, I'm not so sure. So I do worry about that. I worry about Kolisi and his time. These guys have played 4 matches. It's 320 minutes. They'll play their 4th match now. He hasn't played that much rugby, but obviously he's been on watt bikes and rowing machines, etc. So I do worry about him, but I do back the captain of the squad to make it through. 9 is obviously a position that we've been talking about quite a lot. I'm still set on Faf going. I'm still set on Jaden Hendricks going. even though he hasn't had much game time. And now between Kobus Reinach and Herschel Yankees, I think Reinach is in the lead for that. So I think Yankees will miss out if he doesn't get to play. If he doesn't play this next weekend, he's not going to the World Cup.
Yeah.
From a 10 position, Mani Libok, I think, is there. And probably at this point in time as first choice. And then obviously Pollard will go, but he doesn't have the right number of minutes, I don't believe, under his belt. But they'll definitely try to blood him in as soon as he can get those numbers of minutes in. I think there's one more choice at 10 that they'll make. I don't know if Phillips has done enough, so I think they might take a third choice specialist 10 should Libok or Pollard get injured. I think they'll take a third choice specialist 10, and then I think the centers are pretty much done and dusted with the 4 guys that they have: Dialendi, Esterhazen, and Creel, of which Creel and Am can also double up as wingers.
Yeah.
And I think on the wing, Kirtley, Colby, Mapimpi, and I would say Kanan Moody are there. And then finally at fullback, we've got Vili. And then there's gonna have to be a deep dive into who the second fullback would be, and I think that's probably where Damian Willemse comes in.
Yeah.
So I do think Damian is under pressure. I think if he doesn't play this next game, I think because he only played 3 minutes yesterday, and that was a worry for me.
Yeah.
It was a worry for me in a game like that was played yesterday, especially how well he played last year against Argentina in Argentina at number 10. So to play in a year's time, to only play 3 minutes against the same opposition is a bit of a worry in terms of form. So I think he's got work to do. And yeah, the others are going to struggle.
Jade?
Well, Kofi named the squad there.
Yeah.
I think he's about right.
Just touch on who you
basically,
think.
guys, 6 props, so we have to be realistic. Trevor will go, but it's between Ox and Steenkamp for the 6th spot. It's between Dweba and Fourie for the 3rd choice hooker or hybrid hooker flank. So it's between them. Jean Klein, an interesting one. I think they might go Jean Klein instead of Ori because Jean Klein's a specialist 4. And if something does happen to Itzebeth, you don't have a specialist tight head lock there. Although Erge Snyman and Lood can play there, but I mean, it's international rugby. Lucy's are set. I think they are set with Sia, Eskom behind him, and then Kwacha, and then, we have the 2 number 8s in Visa and Dwayne and Peter Steff and Visa and Sous. Scrum offs is a new ball game. Like
so Ross is not going.
Yeah, I'm not going into the whole thingy, but like I said, the only thing that I would say, it's a set in stone, guys. I think Kane and Moody, and it's between Kane and Moody, Damian Willemse for the last spot in the backs, basically.
Fair enough. Vickers, do you have any players that you think still need to show Rassie more on the field, actually?
No, I think it both for me. It boils down to I don't think Trevor's going to go. I honestly don't think Trevor's going to go. I think they'll take Dion for the hybrid. We're talking about the guy who can play flank, the guy who can play hooker. I think that's what they'll probably do. I'm not 100% sure if they will have to make the decision between Kenan Moody and Mapimpi. I think that decision was simple. Mapimpi will go ahead of Kenan. I wouldn't take an extra outside back, knowing that yesterday came on as a winger instead of as a center. So it's a matter of I think from my side, I think we're forgetting one thing. The coaches are showing us all the signs, and as much as we talk about rotation, we ask ourselves, if Mapimpi was substituted in, he didn't have his best game, but is it really, was it, and he didn't start this weekend? What are they looking for? So I think from my side, I would say that if I was Mapimpi, I would be really worried about he going to the World Cup because they might even take less wingers take more forwards to accommodate for Steyn, Jean Steyn, and to accommodate for Ulenduka, 440, which is Mustard. So they might do that. They might do that based on the fact that we have so much cover at wing. We have so much cover. We have so much cover at fullback. Fullback for me, I think. Cheslin is a guaranteed it. He can be covering fullback. He can be, but you must also remember, guys. These guys can bring in people. They can bring in players at a later stage if there is an injury force change. That's also something that we can't forget, and that's what they did. I mean, if you remember, Ugaland, who also took over from Unyakane. Someone took over from Unyakane as well in 2019. So they can bring in more people.
Yeah.
It's just that when we in the initial stage, what we're going to announce is different to what we're going to end up with.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that we might also have to touch on. Sorry.
Fair enough. Enda and Hugh, I'm going to ask you guys a different question. Obviously, we've touched on the Springboks, Argentina, Wales, Australia, not Wales, New Zealand, Australia. But Enda, now we're reaching a month of warm-up games. Currently in Ireland, I mean, what is the mood like? I mean, do you think your squad is currently settled? And obviously, are there any hiccups in terms of news coming through from the camp, etc.? What's happening around Ireland and Irish rugby in this build-up to the World Cup?
It's all been very positive, to be honest. It's all been very, very positive. There are no major injury concerns that have come to light anyway. Obviously, with the Sexton ban, I think it's probably a good thing. Like he probably would have been rested for a lot of those games anyway. He potentially would have played against England, which is always a risk with Johnny because he's prone to injury. So I think the ban is probably good in that sense. So he's going to be wrapped up. But no, it's been very positive. They've been away in camp now for quite a long time. Any of the interviews that I've watched, it all seems very positive. One really interesting thing too is that apparently it's very different to the World Cup prep that they would have had under Schmidt. It's a lot more relaxed, and it's a lot less intense in terms of build up. Like people have time to spend with their family, a lot more breakout time and everything.
Yeah.
So I think there's a really good mood in the camp. So it'll be interesting to see. But I like the warm games and who they pick. I think it's a very settled squad. There won't be many surprises at all. But we'll see. Like obviously, unfortunately, as we saw yesterday in the Australian game, there are going to be injuries. But let's hope there aren't. But but as Vickers touched on, you can always bring in players as well, especially if they happen during the actual tournament itself. But yeah, it's all been very positive. It kicks off next weekend against Italy, I believe, in Dublin. So yeah, looking forward to it. But yeah, there've been nothing really controversial or out of line. Like they seem to be in a very settled place and a very settled squad. But they definitely need game time with this, and they've had a good rest and everything. But yeah, roll on Saturday.
Fair enough. The Welshman in England, Hugh.
I think one thing you definitely won't get from the Welsh public when it comes to rugby is consensus. I think there are a lot of tweets going around Welsh rugby Twitter yesterday when we saw Australia get smashed. Is everyone going, yeah, but they'll still beat us? Similar to what Enda said, really. We had a lot of drama towards the beginning of the summer, but that's all quietened down now, and all of the footage and all of the social media coming out of the camp all looks quite positive. Although, of course, that's only what they would put out. They wouldn't put it out if it was negative. I think we're going into our fourth World Cup with Gatland now. So we know what to expect from these warm-up games. We know that in the first game, he's probably going to field his B team. He's going to field a team where he's looking to see who the final 2 or 3 who are going to be in the final squad are going to be. And then he's probably going to put out a stronger team, probably later on, probably against South Africa. I think he'll probably put out the best team. He's got them all over in Turkey and Switzerland. He's been beating them. So yeah, it's interesting. You know, I don't think we're going to be as bad as people think we're going to be. I believe that we're going to get out of the group, but you'll find a million Welsh fans who say that we're going to come bottom of the group and we're going to lose to Portugal. So yeah, that's just my opinion.
That is very wild. Wales losing to Portugal. Unbelievable, man. Yes, Jade.
Quick one, guys. I know we're running out of time, but I have a quick one quickly. We spoke about, guys that won't make the squad, especially in the Southern Hemisphere. We used to then taking on the medical joker role in the Northern Hemisphere. Does it still apply with URC guys? It's the first time, we're going through this World Cup where we have a lot of URC guys playing. And do URC teams take on medical jokers, or obviously they will be playing for their club? And then the second one is that I want to mention to Vickers that Creevy will be playing his 100th cap the weekend. So he hasn't started to play in 1995. He's only playing his 100th cap the weekend in Argentina. So yeah, one thing to look forward to.
Hugh or Ender, you can jump on Jade's question.
If they're willing to play for free, then yes, they can come and play for a Welsh region if they want to. If they want money, then bad luck, guys. Ireland's got plenty of money, so I'm sure they'll give you a job.
Fair enough. All right, gents, I think that brings us to the end of our segment today. There's a lot of rugby coming through from the next weekends, so we're not going to be doing predictions on Friday. Sunday, we're going to start discussing group stages. So we'll start discussing Group A next week Sunday, and then the following Sunday after that, obviously Group B, C, and D until the World Cup starts. So we will have a lot of predictions for the group stages for the World Cup, and it's going to be intense leading up into the World Cup. It's going to be intense in the World Cup itself. So, gents, looking forward to more discussions with you in the following Sundays. And have a great Sunday. Have a great week ahead. Read more about rugby. Learn more about the game. It's a beautiful game. We all love it. And thanks once again for joining us. And have a great Sunday.
I'm so disappointed you guys didn't mention that I said 30 points New Zealand and just 31 points.
Well done. Well done. We'll cancel the Shannon Frizzell comment.
Hey, guys, what do you call it? I'll redeem myself, eh?
All right, cheers.